When I was a kid, I really loved Star Wars. Not this kind of Star Wars though. This kind of Star Wars. So I really liked the prequels when I was a kid, but when I got a bit older, I went on this site called YouTube a lot, and everyone on there kept telling me that actually these were really bad, and the originals were flawless masterpieces that were way better.
I couldn't believe some of the things they wrote about the prequels, you know? I mean, but really, beyond, I didn't like it. You ruined my childhood, and I'm still angry about the way they treated Jake Lloyd. He was only 10 years old, that boy, and he did exactly what George wanted him to do.
And George Lucas is a money-grubbing hack, and he should never have made these.
At the end of the century, George Lucas wrought upon civilization a new word: anticipantment. The tremendous letdown that was the lazy, bland, and soulless new trilogy. George Lucas was completely within his right to make those movies into the sterile toy marketing vehicles they were.
Luckily for us, in 2012, Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney, and in 2015, Star Wars was back. And now it's somehow even more heated than ever. So this winter saw the 5-year anniversary of The Rise of Skywalker, and this year sees the 10-year anniversary of The Force Awakens. So it's been a decade since the sequels started, and half a decade since they ended, and the consensus on them is
Rey Skywalker.
So there's been a bit of time now to reflect on what the long-term legacy of these three films might be, and I wondered, being a prequels fan, going fucking blind over here. So when I say that Star Wars was always bad, obviously I'm being a tiny bit hyperbolic. Star Wars, original Star Wars, was groundbreaking. It was years ahead of its time. It was full of some of the most creative world building you'll ever see in a film. That being said, is it perfect?
What?
Star Wars, original Star Wars, is nearly 50 years old. It was released way back in the 1970s, before they even had things like books or laminators. So when Star Wars came out, it blew everyone's tiny minds. It's not a particularly meaty story, and it isn't trying to be. It's just a bit of fun, with some of the most creative and immersive special effects and world building you'll ever see in a film. And that's fine, good even, but don't be shocked when a Gen Alpha kid whose brain has been fried by TikTok and Tamagotchi watches it and goes,
Yeah, it's fucking boring to be honest.
things age, and something made nearly half a century ago probably won't work as well now as it did back then. Inevitably, things get dated, and also inevitably, if you make one of the most successful films ever, people are going to build on that. Maybe they make 8 sequels and prequels of varying quality, and in comparison to some of those, this rather basic story just doesn't seem as interesting. Especially when compared to
If you only knew the power of the dark side.
it's probably the best crafted out of all of them, and it does have the greatest cinematic twist in the history of cinematic twists.
Your snack ready. Yoda.
It is kind of a victim of its own success though, because I mean everyone already knows it's coming now. You'd have to have been living in a cave deep in the heart of the Amazon to not know Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. Pretty much everyone knows that, right? Let's be real. Who's getting surprised by that? Some little Gen Alpha kid. Some little fucking twat, just absolute phone addicted gobshite. The Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars film because it's the only one that tries to do anything interesting and actually pulls it off. Empire has a lot of what we art connoisseurs call themes. A theme is a thing which has a point to it. For example, one major theme in Empire is the theme of destiny. Vader wants Luke to work for him at his big tech firm, while this LA resident wants Luke to stay on his boggy weed farm. Despite all of these weird old perverts constantly getting on his back, Luke decides to forge his own path, and it only cost him a hand to do it. The film also raises the stakes of the last one, as the Empire are truly inescapable in this movie, and there isn't a simple way to just blow up all the bad guys at the end. Han and Leia are constantly one step behind the Empire throughout the whole thing, while Luke is off doing whatever this is. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's the best one. It's not my favourite though, because my favourite is this one. Here it comes now. This is it. I'm leading up to it. My favourite Star Wars film. That's Return of the... Oh wait, no, I fucking hate that one. Return of the Jedi has two main problems. Firstly, it's a structural mess, and secondly, it's full of lazy writing that more often or not comes across as rushed. And this begins immediately, as the very first shot of the film is of a second Death Star. Right. It's kind of amazing how much play the Death Star has gotten in Star Wars movies after A New Hope, considering, the whole thing blew up incredibly easily last time, wasting God knows how much of the Empire's resources and personnel. But sure, let's just build another fucker. That'll work. We then completely ignore this and revisit the planet Tatooine, where Han Solo is being held prisoner by Jabba the Hutt. So Lando is already here, and presumably he has been here for some time. You'd guess it was to pass on information to Luke or something, but if that is why he's there, he's pretty bad at it. Like maybe warn Luke that there's a giant monster beneath a trapdoor directly in front of Jabba. Maybe that would have been useful for him to know. But anyway, forget about Lando, because the other characters seem to. Instead, Luke sends in the droids for, So the point of sending the droids in seems to be that R2 could hide Luke's new lightsaber from everybody and eventually give it to him just before his execution. I have a few questions. Did Luke plan to be in this situation all along? If yes, why? If the plan was to just kill everybody in Jabba's palace, why didn't you do that in the first place? At this point, Luke could pretty easily take on a room full of low-level goons and bounty hunters, and they end up killing everybody in the end anyway, so why bother going through the whole rigmarole? Just go in guns blazing. If Luke did plan on him being in this exact situation on this exact spot all along, how could he have known R2 would end up where he needed to be? What if Jabba just destroyed the droids as soon as he got them? Hang on, what if Jabba destroyed the droids as soon as he got them? He clearly doesn't care about real people's lives, so what makes you think he wouldn't just destroy the droids instantly for his own entertainment? Now you've lost 2 more of your friends to this guy, and for no fucking reason. Because seriously, what was the reason for them being there? If it was just to get the lightsaber, why didn't you just bring it with you? Why would you go into this room full of thugs and bounty hunters without your lightsaber? Why did R2 need to hide it in the first place? It's not like the guards searched Luke. They can do shit to him. So that's all my questions about the droid part of the plan. But then, so Leia goes in disguise even though Lando is again already there and doing nothing. Leia brings Chewie with her, who then gets taken prisoner to do nothing. Then Leia, brilliantly, frees Han by herself, only for him to get recaptured and Leia to get captured and made to wear this very tasteful getup, thus inspiring BDSM kinks for generations to come. Was Leia supposed to get herself captured, or was she really trying to free Han here? If she was really trying to free Han here, why didn't Lando help her? Why didn't she check around to see if there were any guards about? And if getting captured was part of the plan, why? You could have kept your bounty hunter getup with the weapons included, might be useful in killing Jabba. Plus you get to wear clothes, which presumably they would want. So in review, at this stage of the plan, Han is still captured, but now so is Chewie, and Leia, and C-3PO, and R2, and Lando is around. And Luke, who's about to come in a minute and rescue all of his fucking stupid friends, doesn't even have his lightsaber on him. This plan has a few holes. What's worse about the whole thing is it's about rescuing Han, but then he gets almost nothing to do in the rest of the movie. Han's whole thing is that he's a pilot, but he's not a great tactician or military leader, so sending him as part of the ground team on Endor gives him fuck all to work with. He should be the one to destroy the Death Star with Lando, not Lando and whoever this guy is. Leia in this movie gets nothing to do apart from being captured. First by Jabba in the dumbest rescue this side of the galaxy, then by the Ewoks, and then by the Empire. I suppose she did kill Jabba, and it sure was lucky that Jabba didn't have any guards by him to stop that from happening, but she doesn't have any connection to Jabba. Surely it should have been Han to do this, no? Look, I'll move away from the Jabba stuff, alright, but it's like the first third of the movie, it doesn't have anything to do with anything else, and it's all complete nonsense. Then we go back to Yoda and he just sort of fucking dies. But not before being like, no, yeah, Vader really is your father. Yeah, no, we have to confirm this because this is only the third movie and people aren't actually sure if we were making it up or not last time. We know! We know he's his fucking father! It's fine! Alright, let's move on to Endor. And the fucking killer teddy bears. The teddy bears are genuinely a stand-in for the Viet Cong, because when I think about making a commentary on the Vietnam War and frame the Empire as the Americans and want to find a species to represent the millions of Vietnamese who fought and died for the freedom of their nation, I think of teddy bears. They're annoying, they're only there to sell toys, they beat the Empire in battle with spears and rocks, and the Empire themselves seem to be pretty useless at beating them back. They're just so ferocious. These Ewoks are just perfectly evolved killing machines. I get what Lucas is going for, and I concede if the Ewoks weren't literally cuddly teddy bears designed to sell toys to children, maybe the metaphor would work better. Come on, this isn't good. Then there's the bad writing that affects the other movies. So originally Luke and Leia weren't supposed to be brother and sister because that frankly makes for a pretty extraordinary coincidence. One of the only 3 female characters in this trilogy happens to be the sister of the main guy. Well, that's convenient. Originally Luke was going to spend a lot of this movie searching for his long lost sister, but then I guess Lucas ran out of time between setting up Leia's OnlyFans page and trading campfire stories with the Vietnamese teddy bear soldiers that there just wasn't enough space to have interesting things in the film. So Luke and Leia were retroactively made siblings, which... But maybe introducing a new character would have been a mistake since so many of the characters already in the film are misused or mistreated. Luke and Vader are the only characters in this movie who get done right, and obviously they're the best part of the film by quite some distance. Particularly once Sheev gets involved, cause man, you gotta love the Emperor. He's a bad dude who loves being a bad dude, and I for one respect it. I think Jedi gets off lightly because of nostalgia and... Actually, it's mostly nostalgia. But also the third act is pretty solid. The Death Star run, brackets, here we go again, is a good watch. And as mentioned, whenever these 3 are on screen, it's pure gold. But a mostly good third act is not enough to save this film for me. Is this the worst movie ever made? No. Is it the worst Star Wars movie ever made? No. Is it shit? Yeah. I'm gonna be honest, yeah, it mostly has.
What's that film that you love?
What film?
The one about the fucking hairdresser, the space hairdresser and the cowboy. The guy's, he's got a tinfoil pal and a pedal bin. His father's a robot and he's fucking fucked his sister.
Star Wars.
That's the one, right? It's like that, okay. I'm gonna fucking kill all the bad guys. And you'll be able to blow up the big...
The Death Star.
The Death Star thing.
Yes.
Then you can go and live happily ever after on the planet of the teddy bears.
They're Ewoks. They're Ewoks.
So I am a prequels fan. What? How could you possibly say that after ripping into the originals? How can you prefer these movies over the old ones? Are you stupid? Yes. Yes, I am. The reason why I like these movies is pretty simple. They're the Star Wars films I grew up watching. Are they cinematic masterpieces? Well, obviously not, but with the exception of Empire, I wouldn't call any Star Wars film like particularly well crafted. And even with the case of Empire, I can appreciate how it is the best crafted of the films, but it isn't my favourite. Obviously my favourite is the one with the memes, the badass music, and the lightsaber fight on the lava planet. When I was a kid, I loved the prequel films. The Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith were constantly playing in my house. Not Attack of the Clones though, even at 7 years old I knew I deserved better than that. As I got older though and started going on this site called YouTube, I came to discover that these movies were literally the worst thing ever made and George Lucas should be shot like the dog he was. This coincided with me reaching the mature age of 12, and naturally, when you're about to become a teenager, you work out that everything you liked as a kid was dumb and for babies, and now you should stop liking them. Star Wars, that's for little dum-dums. Now I'm into stories about a man who dresses like a bat and beats up criminals. Because I'm mature. And this was my mentality for a while. I was the biggest prequels hater because some YouTubers told me that they were really bad and I was dumb enough to agree. I used to be really into this one channel called I Hate Everything, and I remember him talking about the prequels, saying something along the lines of, if you like these movies then fine, but you have to admit that they're inferior to the originals. No, I don't. I like Hope and Menace about the same, and I hate Jedi and Clones about the same, and I can admit that Empire is a better made film than Revenge of the Sith, but at the same time...
This is brilliant, but I like this. Let me put it to you this way, Hammond. You can watch better movies than Revenge of the Sith, but I like Revenge of the Sith.
I really, really like Revenge of the Sith. It might be the thing I've watched the most in my life. And I know that a lot of Star Wars fans feel the same way I do. Funny, that. It's almost as if the real appeal of Star Wars is just to have a fun time and be immersed in a galaxy far, far away. Obviously the prequels have a lot of problems. There's the wonky dialogue.
It's a ship that made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs.
The bad effects. The lack of characterization. And unlike the original trilogy, the prequel films added nothing to the cinematic landscape. The original Star Wars films were groundbreaking efforts of visual effects and pushed the boundaries of what you could do with practical effects and model work. Of course, the prequels actually used more practical effects than the original trilogy, and also broke new ground with incredible digital effects, like having the first fully computer-generated supporting character in a live-action film. Some of the effects look a little wonky by today's standards, but so do many of those in the original trilogy, particularly the original prints that haven't been touched by Lucas's special editions, which you'll struggle to find now, leading a lot of people to think the original Star Wars films have always looked this good. And actually, even if Menace and Clones have aged effects wise, Revenge of the Sith still mostly looks phenomenal. The opening battle over Coruscant alone looks sensational, and not at all like it's from a film from the mid-2000s. But the nostalgia critic or whoever doesn't like the CGI, because that's not his Star Wars, goddammit! And if these movies aren't perfectly redoing and repackaging what has come before, then I'm not interested. I'm not saying the prequels don't have problems, they definitely do, but I think the issues in the prequels can also be found in the originals. The real issue, I think, is that audiences at the time wanted Lucas to make the original trilogy again. Even if you don't like the prequels, which is fine by the way, you're allowed to be wrong. Hopefully you can at least appreciate that they tried to do something different. Maybe the prequels didn't work for you, but at least Lucas was trying to push the franchise forward, rather than, well, doing what Disney did with it. Plus the prequels have this.
Star Wars The Phantom Menace was the most disappointing thing since my son.
For those who don't know him, Mr. Plinkett was the original Star Wars hater. His video series on The Phantom Menace was must-watch viewing for anyone who was interested in film on YouTube in the early 2010s. Like, this is probably the most famous review of anything on this godforsaken website, right?
Okay. Mr. Plinkett had said J.J. Abrams would be great at directing Star Wars films.
You see, in my opinion, where the prequels utterly failed, Star Trek excelled. In fact, J.J. Abrams should have directed the prequels, and George Lucas should have directed people to their seats in the theater.
This was before the sequels, this was before Disney acquired Star Wars, space action and emotions, and J.J. Abrams is good at both.
So one thing I find pretty interesting about all of the criticism from around this time is just how much personal anger there is towards George Lucas.
George Lucas raped our childhood. George Lucas raped our childhood. George Lucas raped our...
That is the most hideous fucking neckbeard I've seen in my life. So yeah, the anger felt by those two fine specimens is a pretty good example of some of the more extreme things a lot of Star Wars fans had to say about the prequels. The amount of negativity towards them was just ridiculous, I think. Take for example in Plunkett's video when he says that this old man fighting this kinky sumo wrestler in A New Hope is more exciting to watch than in Revenge of the Sith, because the two characters are written better in A New Hope than in the prequels, even though they barely say anything to each other, and A New Hope largely lets you fill in the gaps yourself about their history. Let's just go over the brilliant writing these two actually get in the film.
I've been waiting for you, Obi-Wan. We meet again at last. The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
Only a master of evil, Darth.
Sensational! Plunkett also talks a lot about characterization, so let's look at how our characters deal with grief, for example. In Attack of the Clones, Anakin's mother is killed by the Sand People. Sand People, Jesus Christ. Then in a furious rage, Anakin kills as many of them as he can get his hands on. He then takes his mother's body back to the family home and continues grieving long after. In Revenge of the Sith, it's shown the loss of his mother affected him so profoundly, he's willing to basically become the embodiment of pure evil, just so he doesn't have to lose someone else again. The death of his mother is a significant event in Anakin's life that clearly impacts his character on a deep level, which is shown time and time again. In A New Hope, Leia loses her whole planet and everyone she cares about, but after they all escape the Death Star, she spends the whole trip consoling a guy she just met, who in turn has lost a guy he barely knew. A New Hope is a flawlessly written cinematic masterpiece.
The idea that Mr. Plunkett saying J.J. Abrams would make a great
The
director
Last
of Star Wars
Jedi
movie
is an abomination.
has
It's an
absolutely
insult
no
to
impact.
everything Star Wars is and
Disney
was.
gone woke.
It's a narrative
Star Wars
disaster.
woke. Disney bad. Star Wars.
To those who didn't like it, I totally get it, respect it. To those who loved it, I'm grateful and dubious of your taste. I'm just kidding.
Not sponsored by Corona. Sponsored by this. Go listen to it. So I do think the sequels have a lot of problems. It's possible that the sequels will eventually be appreciated much how the prequels are today. By some people, anyway. So let's start with...
I guarantee you, right now, at some point he's going to complain that it's a rehash of A New Hope.
Remember this clip from the beginning of the video?
The lazy, bland, and soulless new trilogy.
That's from YouTuber CGP Grey back in 2011. Grey, despite having some questionable videos from around this time, generally did not otherwise take jabs at filmmakers for their projects. Yet he describes Lucas's prequels as a lazy, bland, soulless, and sterile. Let's listen to a totally random review of a Disney Star Wars film from 2019.
The Rise of Skywalker is a complete, total, and unmitigated disaster. A hollow shell of nothingness, with no heart, no soul, and no meaning. To quote William Shakespeare, this movie is a walking shadow, a poor player that struts.
Wow, that took less than a minute. I can't help but notice that much of the criticism aimed at the prequels is the same aimed at Disney, and this woman, Kathleen Kennedy in particular. Which is ironic because the prequels and sequels have many different problems. The prequels are paced kinda weirdly and the dialogue is...
I don't like sand.
Whereas the sequels are just bizarrely written. The Last Jedi throws a lot of The Force Awakens in the bin, and then The Rise of Skywalker does the same to The Last Jedi. So I don't know what the consensus on this film will eventually be, but at the time I can tell ya, people fucking went nuts for this one. It was really popular and generally was liked by most people. It does just play it so safe, you know? And you also know that of the original things it comes up with, it doesn't really go anywhere good.
Disney gone woke. Star Wars woke. Disney bad. Star Wars.
No.
So it's the one that gone fucked it all up. So I'll start by saying I like Rian Johnson. I really like Knives Out. I really fucking love Glass Onion. Looper, that was fucking good. I do think The Last Jedi is his worst movie. I just think the space stuff is so stupid. It's the dumbest, slowest chase in the galaxy. The movie kind of loses me as soon as this happens. I watched this film in the cinema with my school friends and we all just fucking burst out laughing. So Leia's out of it, so they put this woman in charge and she doesn't tell any of the rest of the rebellion what their plan is, which by the way was just to get on some shuttles and run away. Shuttles which can't be tracked apparently, so I don't get why they didn't do this earlier. And I also don't get why the Fist Order isn't tracking shuttles. I need to be told that. But Holdo doesn't tell anyone her plan, as more ships get destroyed, and I just don't think it's very good. I like all the stuff with Luke and Kylo and Rey. I like that Luke is this weird old hermit. And I haven't even mentioned Rose and Finn. When Rose saves Finn and just dooms all the others. We're gonna win this war by saving what we love. That being said, I do think it's the best looking out of all the Star Wars films. Say what you will about him, but Rian Johnson knows how to use fucking camera. When me and my friends came out of The Last Jedi, one of the things we said to each other was, well, where's it going to go from here? Because the way that film ends, it is a bit like, now what? I won't get too much into my criticisms of the films because you've definitely heard them before. But this is a retread of A New Hope. A lot of The Last Jedi is boring and dumb, like 2 out of 3 of the main plot points are boring and dumb. And The Rise of Skywalker is one of the most spectacular failures in writing on this higher budget. Somehow Palpatine returned. Somehow Palpatine returned. Why should I even bother? Am I just being too harsh? Am I just being a fucking dick? Well, I'm basically always being a fucking dick. Yeah, sorry about the sound. The mic just decided to have a fucking spasm. Having watched all 9 of these fucking movies, I have to say, they're kind of a mixed bag. I think Star Wars' mythic status was held up by Empire for a long time. But as more sequels and prequels have come out of varying quality, I just wouldn't be surprised if these films eventually found their fans, like these ones did. But I was just joking about you needing to castrate yourself. You can like what you like. 'Cause to be honest, Star Wars was kind of always bad. And that's okay. Thanks to Not Winter, Caleb Geeta, Creepy Old Bugser, Jack Headcase, Yosef Carpenter, Matilda, just Matilda, Max Sonofre, Speef, 30,000 Bees, Tom Jolly and Sweet Caroline, Winged Harmony, and Wolf Blexen. Alright, this video is super late, so bye.